Well, I think staying on that proposition, the other thing that caught my attention, because it's only 37 words. It's not a long proposition. Is most of them, they go and they say, reference, this law or so forth. This is just 37 words, and when you compare this proposition one to what our current law is, the thing that, like I said, really struck me is they changed the word woman. It's no longer woman to have an abortion. The fundamental right of a woman to have an abortion, that's been eliminated. It now says individual reproductive rights. And so, I was talking to a friend of mine over at Stanford, and they're like, well, that right there, because they've been looking at this particular proposition, that can raise a lot of concerns, and it's probably going to end up in the court system, because if I, the individual, as a man, decide that, if I get someone pregnant and they decide they want to have an abortion, but I'd say, no, I want to keep the child, or vice versa. Well, as I, the individual, I have a fundamental right, and according to these 37 words, to either have an abortion or not have an abortion. And so at what point do my fundamental rights conflict with another individual's fundamental rights? And so,
And
whether
so
it's the
let's,
woman, but
and so,
because in the previous law it said woman
right.
has a fundamental right to an abortion or not to an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, it says individual.
Right.
And so whose rights, whether you want to or not, I mean, whose rights are superior to the other person, or if there isn't. And here's the thing is, at the end of the day, it may end up going to the court and says, okay, the woman who's carrying the baby, her rights maybe are more superior or so forth. But it's going to go right back into the courts,
Mm-hmm.
right? The same place where you had this whole, this whole issue of Roe v. Wade and Dobbs case. You had it right back in the courts of where people don't want it to go to.
Right.
And so we're going to have more judges. And you brought this up the other day, which I thought was genius, about, telling folks, is like, you got to remember that Donald Trump appointed a lot of judges.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, just because it's California, I mean, he appointed, I think, 9 judges on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals up in San Francisco. So, that's always been the haven to go to if you've got a liberal cause. You necessarily can't count on that anymore. But you're right. I mean, California has one of the most, if not the most, liberal abortion laws on the books right now, which, if you're pro-life, you don't like. If you're pro-choice, it makes sense because it's reflective of the legislature and the governor, both Republican and Democrat, that we've had. So it is a proper reflection, I think, of the elected officials that pass the laws in the state. But it is one of the most liberal, if not the most liberal law in the land, state law in the land. And so, my question is, as someone who on occasion enjoys putting down a bet now and then, why do you go up to the table and roll the dice on something like that, which allows, if you're pro-choice, why do you roll the dice on something that has 37 words, like you said, that you take any smart lawyer or anybody with a law degree or anybody that watches court TV that, decides to come up with some case, and you have in perpetuity litigation taking place, and who knows who you end up in front of and how that then gets translated in an appeal or something like that, when you've got something in your hand right now that is the best that there is, if that's what your position is and that's what you believe. That's why, to me, Prop 1 is a gimmick in terms of him launching himself onto one of the things he's doing to launch himself onto the national stage, to set himself apart from other Democrats. And, that's a smart political move, but if you're pro-choice and you live in California, if you're pro-choice and you live in California, that's a pretty risky move, because it will, if it does pass, let's just ask this question, because I'm still a newcomer to California. All these people have seen initiatives in California out the wazoo. The more ambiguous something is, the more something has holes in it, the better the chance that it gets overturned, that it gets challenged, that it gets litigated. And I would think that would be the last thing you'd want, because you know you have something in your hand. It's like, sitting at the blackjack table and you dealt 18, the dealer's holding a 6, and you say, hit me. We call it back home in Rhode Island, shtunav. That's what that is. Not all there. That's why I think people really need to take a look at what they have in terms of what the law is right now.
Well, and I think it's important to let everyone who's watching or listening to us realize that even if you vote no, you're still protected under the California law, which does provide for the rights for a woman to have an abortion.
Right.
But the other thing too that struck me is, so you've got this law that right now has been in place. It's already been challenged in the courts. It's already gone through its whole process. Why not just make that the constitutional amendment?
There you go.
Why not just copy and paste and make that the constitutional amendment? And then, okay, everyone's protected. And now
Right.
it's in the Constitution.
Right.
Why go out and put 37 words? And the funny thing is that, you listen to these constitutional lawyers on the yes side of Proposition 1, and their argument is, well, this is kind of an aspirational thing. This is, right now we're going to let the legislature will end up making the determination. And it's like, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, have you seen the other propositions like Prop 47 and 57 that dealt with crime? That aspirational thing, that is your people busting in a Walmart and stealing stuff, because while you may think it's aspirational, the details matter.
Right.
What it says matter. The releasing early of criminals who beat the hell out. I mean, there's this one guy who beat the hell out of his girlfriend. He ended up sodomizing his 14-year-old niece, and then gang raping some like 16-year-old teenager. Because of the way Proposition 57 was written, he got out of jail early. And the judge, said, look, we don't want to get him out of jail, but this is the way the proposition was written. And this goes in line with the proposition. Your intention may have been one thing, but this is actually the law. And that's the hardest thing for people to understand, even reporters. And I get, there a lot of them, they want to do this aspirational thing, or this law, it's gonna codify, women's right for an abortion. It's not a woman's, it's an individual's, but at the same time, it's like the details matter. And this. I'm pro-choice, and for me, it's just like you look at this thing and it's like, okay, folks, you could have taken your existing law and you could have codified,
plug it in.